Hi, I'm Grace Judson, self-proclaimed proud leadership geek here with another installment of management tips for new managers and new supervisors. And today's video is on a tough subject because I don't think any of us want to believe that we have a liar or a cheat on our team. Sometimes the reality is we do have somebody who's not entirely honest. And so how about it? Have you had to deal with that? Have you had to deal with someone who's lying about their work or maybe lied on their job application or they might be stealing stuff from the company? Okay, this is it. As I said, this is a tough subject, and even so, I am glad you're here. And I'm glad that I have a chance to support you in dealing with this and with many other topics relevant for new managers and supervisors. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit that little notifications bell so you'll be informed when I publish a new video every week. Okay, dishonest behavior covers a wide range. It's anything from lying about previous experience all the way up to fraud and embezzlement or something specific to your industry. Just think of the emissions scandal at Volkswagen a little while ago, for instance. So it is hard to deal with. We don't want to deal with it. It feels like conflict. It probably is conflict. I get it. I was in management and leadership for over 16 years before I started my leadership coaching business. Wow, 14 years ago now. And one of the things I hated, and my clients today also hate, is having to handle this issue of unethical behavior. But here is something to remember, and it's important. Unethical behavior is almost never a one-off isolated event. The employee who takes a box of pens one day is going to take a ream of paper the next week, and so on. And don't fool yourself. Taking supplies from the office is theft. But we really have to be aware on an even bigger scale than that. If you look at case studies of major scandals, like the VW thing I mentioned a minute ago, they make it clear that unethical behavior isn't something that just happens like flipping a switch. It's a slow slide. Someone fluffs over a crucial detail or doesn't tell their manager about a potential problem or chooses to take the easy way out instead of facing a hard decision, and then it just keeps sliding downhill. And dishonesty is kind of weirdly contagious. As humans, we tend to go along with the crowd. It's kind of how we're wired, right? If we see someone doing something questionable and they look like they're getting away with it and they appear to be successful, maybe not just in that specific behavior, but across the board, no matter how upstanding and honest we may believe ourselves to be, there will be a tendency to overlook what's happening. And for some people, even start participating in the same or similar behavior. And that's what they see in those case studies. We don't want to believe that because we have an identity, a vision of ourselves as honest and ethical. We believe in our integrity, and that is a good thing. But the reluctance to make a fuss or to confront someone about their behavior or to think it's not my business or so on and so forth, that's real. So I hope I'm clear that I'm not intending to offend or insult you, but let's be honest, at least with ourselves, right? Is there nothing you can think of over the entire course of your life and especially your career that maybe crossed the line a little bit? I know I can certainly think of things that I did or didn't do that crossed that line for me. And as someone who values integrity very highly, that's uncomfortable to say the least. I mean, I can look back on those things and, oh, that's hard. And normally at this point, I would ask you to comment, but I'm not putting anyone on the spot here. So I will just leave it at that and say that as challenging as it is, it's also very informative to look at those instances where you fell short of your own standards and see what was going on at the time that created the conditions that made that possible for you. I hope that made sense. What was going on during that time frame that created conditions, created an environment where not living up to your own standards was possible? And that can give you insight into what might be happening around you with other people right now. So, okay, Given that we know this happens, and now that you know that one small act can be, the snowball that starts the avalanche or the pebble that starts the landslide, what do you do about it? Well, first, don't ignore it and hope it's not real or that it will go away, because it won't. Second, however, make sure it is real before you take action. You don't want to act only on suspicion. You need to do the work to find out whether your suspicion is, in fact, fact. Because if you act only on suspicion, you run the risk of accusing someone who's innocent of any wrongdoing. And that means that not only do you upset and demoralize that person and potentially others on the team who may learn about what happened, but in extreme cases, you can leave yourself and your company open to a lawsuit. And you don't want any of that. So do the research. Find out what's really going on, and don't let whether you like or dislike the person impact your judgment. Don't let whether their work is good, bad, or indifferent, or even excellent affect your judgment either. There are way too many situations where someone's supposedly excellent or indispensable work has caused managers to overlook bad behavior, but in the long run, that is always a mistake. I wish I could give you more ideas on how to do the research, but each instance of dishonesty is unique, and there's such a wide range of possible wrongdoing, like I said a minute ago. So there's not much I can give you in the way of specifics, but you need to make sure that there is a problem, and you need to document the problem, and then the scope and size of the problem will determine what you need to do. And that can vary, right? Because, for instance, maybe your company policy on taking that box of pens or the ream of paper, maybe that's okay within your organization. I think it's a little questionable, but that's me. It's typically viewed as fairly minor, but depending again on your company policy, that might be something you want to address. Discovering that someone lied on a resume or on a job application, that's more likely to be grounds for termination, right? Because they are in that job under false pretenses. Covering up a problem or taking shortcuts that impact quality, well, that depends. It depends on the impact of the organization. It depends on company policy. It depends on the impact of the customer, potentially even to the environment. This is a more severe issue. And here's an interesting wrinkle on that, because the bigger the issue, the more likely it is that there's more than one person involved, and the more challenging it therefore becomes to deal with it, right? And I'm not suggesting that you're going to ever be facing an issue like the Boeing airplane crashes, or the Volkswagen emissions scandal, or the Challenger spacecraft explosion. Each of those arose out of a combination of human error, unwillingness to admit there was a problem, and obviously, at least in some cases, extremely unscrupulous and dishonest behavior. But if you're in an industry where human safety is a significant factor, which covers a lot of ground, medicine, construction, automotive, aerospace, and so on, you have a responsibility to take action when you see something going on. Okay, let's set those dire situations aside and assume you're dealing with something a little more garden variety in terms of dishonesty. You've verified the facts, you've checked with your HR department on their policies. Clearly, your next step is to talk with the employee. You're either going to fire them outright, or you're going to put them on a performance plan for improvement. Again, depending on the severity and nature of the behavior, I've said it before, HR policies and so on. It requires, as always, a private, closed-door conversation. I covered detailed steps for putting someone on a performance plan in the video on managing a lazy employee, and I will include the link to that video in the description down below, as well as the performance plan checklist that I created for that video. There's not much else I can say except I feel your pain if this is something you're dealing with right now, or have dealt with in the past, or let's face it, probably will deal with in the future. We all ultimately have to handle these types of challenging situations. And talking with someone about dishonesty or unethical behavior of any sort is probably the hardest thing to do as a manager, because it's almost inevitably going to be a confrontation. At least when you're working with someone to improve performance outside of this question of dishonesty, you're in a helping mode. But in this instance, you are in a no, this is not acceptable in any way, shape, or form mode, and that's hard. So with that said, I will just add that for more on the lying, dishonest, or cheating employee, or on several other different types of difficult employees, you want my ebook on the 5 most challenging employee types and how to manage them. The link is down there in the description, where you'll also find the link to the full YouTube playlist here of how to manage difficult employees. As always, if this video was helpful, please let me know by liking it, subscribe, share it with your colleagues, and comment below to let me know of any insights or aha moments you had. Good luck and take care.